peri-prosthetic joint infection, or PJI, an infection of their artificial joint.
I think this is an incredibly important sector, and I think it's underserved. Frankly, I'm only aware of one other company looking at drug delivery.
Most orthopedics don't even know this term yet, but they're learning it. If you can get to that MBEC, that minimum biofilm eradication concentration, you can actually kill the remaining biofilm.
Congratulations on what looks like a really exciting solution, potential solution for a really tough problem.
Do you like science? Is medicine your passion? Then I think the pitch is for you. My name is Robin Young. I was a medical technology analyst for 30 years. If you've never seen how medical breakthroughs get from the lab to the patient, I think you would be amazed and astonished. For me, it's the most thrilling experience you can imagine. So I invited a group of the most interesting medical breakthrough companies I know to pitch their science, their vision, their passion to 4 really smart and experienced investors, engineers, physicians, and consultants. Can you spot a future winner? If you like this video, please subscribe to our YouTube channel. Visit me at www.ryortho.com. But most of all, support the entrepreneurs you will meet on The Pitch. Thank you.
So let's get started. And to get us started, I think let's look at the world of total joint replacement and imagine being able to address the clinical and financial burden associated with managing peri-prosthetic joint infections without having to perform revision surgery. So our first presenter believes they have a minimally invasive solution that can do just that. Our first pitch is from Jeff Capelsbury with Forcast Ortho.
Total joint replacement has become a widely adopted practice of medicine where patients benefit by an implant that replaces a damaged or diseased joint. Unfortunately, a percentage of these patients suffer peri-prosthetic joint infection, or PJI, an infection of their artificial joint. This contributes to an estimated $1.2 billion global market for treatment of patients suffering with PJI in both hips and knees. I conceived our technology to address the inadequate treatment options that are available today. PJI can lead to limb amputation or even death. PJI is not effectively resolved with oral or IV systemic antibiotics due to resistant biofilm on the implant. Today, I have 3 surgical treatment options. They're all expensive, and in many hospitals, the most aggressive option is not profitable for the provider. We formed Forcast to improve infection treatment for PJI patients at lower payer cost, lower patient morbidity, and better provider economics. We've studied PJI pathogens, their biofilm susceptibility to antibiotics, and combined with published clinical research pioneered by our scientific advisory board member, Dr. Leo Whiteside, we understand the safe and effective local dosing requirements required to significantly improve PJI treatment. We achieve this by placing a small subdermal implant containing a refillable reservoir and a dosing system adjacent to the infected joint. Using a tunneled catheter, we direct antibiotic into the synovial capsule to maintain our target local concentration. Dosing is managed at home by holding our external magnetically coupled controller over the implant once or twice a day for 6 weeks. This duration is consistent with the standard of care and Dr. Whiteside's protocol. Our implant eliminates any hygiene issues associated with exposed access. Dosing is scheduled like an alarm clock and takes about a minute. Dosing period and rate can be programmed specific to the patient and the antibiotic employed. During a weekly checkup, the implant's reservoir is refilled through a percutaneous injection. Once therapy is complete, the implant and the catheter are removed in a brief clinical procedure.
We have a strong team with deep experience in related development, regulatory approval, and commercialization. We have 3 issued patents with 7 applications pending. More are planned as we see our device platform extending into other clinical areas. As a combination product, RIDS is packaged with commercially approved antibiotic pursuing a 505(b)(2) regulatory pathway, leveraging a modest phase 3 clinical trial with market introduction in 2025. Our RIDS platform represents an attractive acquisition opportunity for multiple targeted drug delivery markets. We enjoy ongoing dialogue with several market leaders as we advance towards commercialization, which offers a significant improvement to an underserved patient group and unmet clinical need.
Partner with us as we improve healthcare and reduce the devastating impact of infection following total joint replacement.
I'll start today with my brother, who apparently has the same personal shopper, Mr. Tony Viscoliosi. So Tony, let's start with you. Thank you.
I have to say that I'm very impressed with what I heard about Forcast Ortho. Jeff and Jerry, you sounds like you have picked a very important direction From a financial point of view, the market opportunity is very large and the problem is very big. Well, I think this direction is a brilliant direction. The ability to save money is pretty enormous if it works. And I think it's a smart strategy to tranche capital in.
Tony, thank you very much.
Sure.
Let's go on to Mike.
Thanks, Scott. I want to congratulate the two of you on what you've accomplished so far. I think this is an incredibly important sector, and I think it's underserved. Frankly, I'm only aware of one other company looking at drug delivery in this space, and just maybe one other company that even addresses this sector with a product. Joint infection is a massive and debilitating is and so I have a few technical questions. One, my understanding is in this sector, it's all about the biofilm. It's all about breaking the biofilm because it's very sticky and the infection is adhering to that biofilm. How effective is the drug at doing just that, getting into the, breaking the biofilm apart?
Your question gets to the heart of the problem of why peri-prosthetic infection is so hard to treat. Is we understand now more so in the last decade than ever, is that the biofilm is the problem. The bacteria get encased in a matrix that makes it very difficult to eradicate, that helps them survive. So there's two things that are predicated on the success of the treatment. One is a very thorough debridement. Actually cleaning the implant, washing it out, getting as much of that bile burden down, the burden of the biofilm down as much as possible. And you can get that fairly low. You can't get it to zero just by doing that. Then you need to hit it with really high concentration of antibiotics. Now we've learned, again, and this is, most orthopedics don't even know this term yet, they're learning it. There's something called the minimum inhibitory concentration for bacteria, which if you have a free floating bacteria in the body or in the joint, it's a pretty low concentration of antibiotic that you need to kill that bacteria. When they're in biofilm, there's something called the minimum biofilm eradication concentration, called the MBEC versus the MIC, which is poorly not well understood by most people, which is typically orders of magnitude higher than the minimum inhibitory concentration. But Dr. Whiteside, who's on our board, has shown, and he's been doing it for years, if you can get to that MBEC, that minimum biofilm eradication concentration, you can actually kill the remaining biofilm. This requires a much higher dose, and that's the strategy that we're going at. If you give an IV dose, give an IV injection into your arm, the amount of concentration you're getting into the joint is very, very low. Literally orders of magnitude less than we're going to be delivering locally.
Do you see this as just a debridement and no replacement of the implant?
So the gold standard is that for a chronic infection. Still the gold standard for an acute one that just occurred or right post-op is still a washout and change the plastic spacer and hope for the best. And that's around a 50% cure rate, depending on the literature. Some people have a much higher cure rate, some people less, depending on how well the debridement and the type of antibiotic you're giving. So we are trying to shift procedures to make that procedure, which is much better for the patient. If you just change out their plastic spacer and get them going on through life, we're trying to make that much, much more successful than it is now. That's our goal.
Thank you. And thank you, Mike, for the good questions. Audrey, let's turn to you.
Thanks, Scott. Hi, gentlemen. Congratulations on what looks like a really exciting potential solution for a really tough problem. Many different kinds of infections, many different antibiotics. Is this just going to be an open platform and the dosage is determined by the surgeon, or how does that get figured out and the right, treatment for each patient?
Right. So we have been quantifying what concentrations you need to get to MBEC. We started a couple of years ago doing our own independent laboratory studies. And so we have some data for some of the antibiotics, not all of them. Our plan is to use 4 distinct antibiotics to cover a broad spectrum. It's not going to cover 100% of bacteria, but it'll probably cover 95, 98% of the most common ones.
Okay, so you'll have different varieties of the implant prepared,
yes,
depending on which antibiotic. Got it. Thank you.
Thank you, Audrey. For my part, I want to try to merge the technical with the market question. Your incidence of 4% in the US and 2% elsewhere seems to be double or triple what the literature is showing. And so I'm raising the question from Parvizi and others, I'm raising the question of how does that relate to those patients that have a biofilm problem and those patients that have a sort of peri-prosthetic at the bone interface, where I think, as I understand your technology, you're not going to have access to be able to treat at the implant fixation site. And how does that then relate to, first of all, I congratulate and applaud you for taking on this enormous challenge, but I actually think that your price is too low, given the amount that you can save, and but your penetration in your model looks like it's 100%. So can you comment on that? So you've got two things, you got price, penetration, and maybe the incidence, and reconciling that with the literature.
So yeah, on the market side, we're estimating out of 2025 a total U.S. market of about 82,000 patients. And that's a more aggressive number than what you're seeing in literature today. Our goal will be to treat a good number of those patients, a large percentage of them. We still, as Jared just mentioned, we still are working through what percentage that we'll see from the acute versus chronic. And we're familiar a little bit with Dr. Parvizi's work. We don't aspire that there's a 4% incident rate. So I'll just offer that we've calculated this from literature and what we're seeing regarding a total market size and a projection out in 2025. Our approach to treating the patient with a lower cost is to be able to get it into every hospital. The idea that we're dealing with a 50% to an 85% success rate means that we are dealing with if you will, the probabilities of having a reoccurrence and persistence of PJI. And so we're trying to stack up an economic model against that probability of having to do redos and secondary procedures and advancing the treatment.
And the numbers that we are looking at, our economic model is taking out, is really considering the patients of those infections that would be candidates for a polyethylene exchange only and not a full revision. I've said from the beginning, and I've always said there's always going to be a place for a two-stage. People that have chronic indolent infections that have been there for months or years, that have osteomyelitis, infection of the bone, those implants need to come out. There's no question. And luckily there's a company doing that work, which we see as a competitor, but not really, because we're coming at it in a different way. I mean, I love what they're doing and I love what we're doing. I think they're coming in different places. But there is a sweet spot where you can save people's joints that have infections if you catch them early enough and eradicate the biofilm before it had a chance to take over into the bone and soft tissues. And that's the market we're going after. And it's huge.
So now it's time for the audience to understand what you think. So from what you've heard, is this technology a winner and a game changer, or do they need to go back to the drawing board? So register your opinion in this poll. We'll share the results in just a moment. And well, you can see the split across here. Almost 40% think it's a promising opportunity and needs some more work, but 50% think you're a winner and a game changer and you could change the standard of care. So congratulations, you take this in under advice. Let's just very quickly run around the horn again and see if there's any other sort of key challenges or take-home messages that each of our panelists want to take. We'll start with you, Tony.
Thank you so much, Scott. So I do have an important question about exactly where are you with the development of the subdermal implant pump?
It's in design and development. We have an animal device that we're using now. That is our status. There is a part of that ARAM we talked about earlier was related to moving from an animal study status device to a clinical device, a clinical unit device. So we're early stage.
We have prototypes. We have working prototypes that are ready for commercialization. But we have functional devices.
To you, Mike, for any last comment.
Look, I'd say, keep fighting the good fight. This is an important space. There's very few therapies beyond what you've already discussed, which is really, incision and debridement, and then IV antibiotics, and then if that doesn't work, joint replacement, multi-stage. So good job.
Appreciate it. Thanks.
Terrific. Audrey?
I'll join the chorus and wishing you continued luck. I'm curious what your conversations with the strategics are telling you at this point for what your likely last milestone will be before an exit.
On the orthopedic side, the real interest is first see the first in human data, be able to show clinical response in human models, and then potentials for partnership in the Series B round for the clinical work.
Great, thank you.
Thank you. Well, I have to agree with the panel. I think as I started out, you guys are really attacking a challenging and important problem. I think tying back to Tony's point regarding investment, I think it's worth sharpening your pencil and just making sure that all your numbers look right so that the investment and thesis makes sense. So thank you again for a very interesting presentation. For anyone who wants to contact Forcast Ortho directly, here is the information that you'll need. You can also find them fairly easily on the web. And I'll thank you again, Jeff.
Thank you very much.
Thanks for allowing us to present. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Fantastic.